Hi, this is Sue with part 7 of Saving Words. Thanks for being here. Thursday, March 31st, 2011. In Hickory Hills, in my old childhood bedroom. Good morning, surgery day. I hope you're up for this, Pop. Every day means so much at this point. 2:15 p.m. Steve and I are in Christ Hospital's waiting room lobby on the 6th floor. Mom and Kath are in Dad's hospital room. Dad has looked the same since we got here early this morning. His eyes remain closed, and he is wearing his Walkman set to WBEZ, Chicago Public Radio. I hope they have good programming today. Steve and I are sitting in the chairs next to Dad in his hospital room, and the nurse just informed us that they should be taking Dad at 3:30 p.m. or so for surgery. Dad coughs gently, but often, and sounds very raspy. Steve and I talk a little bit about nothing much, and try to include Dad. When the room falls silent, after a few minutes, Dad, with his eyes closed, tells Steve and me to ignore him, and not to stare at him, or to leave the room. We are a family in the midst of an unwelcome situation. God only knows what is to come. 10:35 p.m. On my bed in my childhood room. Yay, the spine surgeon said Pop did great. Wow, surgery lasted from 5:30 to 8:45 p.m. Woo! Hope Pop is okay. Friday, April 1, 2011, noon. On Mom's couch in Hickory Hills. Mom went out to get her hair cut earlier and is now doing a little laundry. I worked on setting up the directory on her phone system so that her 3 children's names appear first in her contacts. Mom called the ICU at 8 this morning, and they said Dad is exhausted and resting. The nurse suggested coming late this afternoon, but just for a few minutes. Okay, we'll visit Dad for just a few minutes. And hey, we have some big news here in Hickory Hills, Illinois. Population, 14,000. And the big news is the precious goldfinches have returned to Mom and Pop's bird feeder. Mom's been hanging out the door trying to get a good photo of them, especially of the bright yellow male. She said she's learning how to be patient with the birds. Maybe that is a lesson that will carry over as she walks the road ahead with Dad. A lot of the birds here are in a frenzy today. A sparrow was tugging at Mom's old alyssum and carried a few strands of it in its claws back to its nest. A pair of cardinals was flying around the neighbor's yellow forsythia bush, and a group of starlings lifted from the telephone wires and soared to the sky. My centering prayer article was due tonight at midnight. Good thing I asked for an extension. I meditated for about 5 minutes as I sat across from Pop in his room yesterday, but then I thought I better open my eyes, uncross my legs, and return to my reading. I didn't want Pop to misinterpret what I was doing or thinking. That is, I didn't want him thinking that I was praying because I was desperate. Pretty weird thinking now, I see. It's gently raining on this gray April Fool's Day. Maybe I'll take this time to center while Mom's downstairs with the laundry. Who knows what this day will bring? 10:51 p.m. Back in my own bed in Park Ridge. Mike picked me up a few hours ago so we could get to Park Ridge to attend a party for the adults who helped at the teen retreat last month. Such nice people, and a joyful and relaxing get-together. Mom and I visited Dad today for a few minutes mid-afternoon. He was sitting up in bed and looked better than I thought he would. We delivered some of his personal items. "What day is it?" Dad asked. "It's Friday," I said. "Still Friday," he responded. Later, I asked him if I should put his glasses on the side table. "Can you put them on?" he asked. "Should I put them on you?" I asked, sort of rhetorically. "Don't answer a question with a question," he said. "Okay, I'll put the glasses on your face." "Are you going to open your eyes?" I asked. Pop didn't answer or open his eyes. "Okay, we're leaving," I said. "We'll see you later." I hope the docs and staff know what they're doing. Good night, Pop. I hope tomorrow is a better day. Oh, but before I close, earlier today, first, Mom fell asleep around 9:30 a.m. while on her computer downstairs as she waited for the laundry to cycle through. Then she dozed off while reading the newspaper from 2 to 3 p.m. on the couch, and fell asleep again during the news hour on TV from 6 to 7 p.m. I called out to her from across the living room around 7:05 p.m. to let her know that Mike would be arriving in a few minutes to take me back home. Obviously, she was exhausted today. Sunday, April 2nd, 2011. Mike got up at 6:30 a.m. to drive Michael to volleyball practice. I slept a bit longer and called my neighbor Helen to confirm that she was picking me up at 10 a.m. She looked beautiful as she walked up the driveway to collect me. Her young adult daughter drove us to Helen's mom's one-year memorial service. I don't remember the Serbian word for the service, even though I heard it all day long. We met at her mother's gravesite and circled around an Orthodox priest and a seminarian who sang most of the prayers. Those gathered joined the clergy as they made the sign of the cross from right to left throughout the memorial. I had hoped to complete the book I had been working on with Helen about her mom's life for the first anniversary of her mother's death, but that day is today. I guess I missed the deadline. I miss my dad, and I feel sorry for him. I pray that he is getting stronger. I miss talking to him about news stories and religion. I remember asking him years ago why he was Catholic and why he attended Mass. He told me that he had investigated other religions, but that Catholicism worked best for him. I know at least once or twice he drove to New Melray Abbey near Dubuque, Iowa, for a silent weekend retreat with the monks there. He was also a student of the Bible. Way back in the early 1970s, I used to join my parents at their weekly charismatic renewal meetings a few suburbs away, where men and women swayed during the songs of glory and praise and healing. After the music slowed and the prayer meeting ended, people drank coffee and mingled. It was then that my dad occupied a spot at the end of a long wooden table and was available to answer anyone who had questions about the Bible. As for why he regularly claimed a place in the church pew on Sundays, he told me that it was for the reminder. It was for the reminder that he received from Mass each week. And for now, in this present moment, it almost seems weird wishing he would regain his strength and become his old self after we've seen him so weakened. But oh, it would be great. Not having been through this before, I don't know what to expect. But maybe that's not actually true. I had been a hospice volunteer several years ago and visited patients who weren't nearly as weakened as Dad and who passed away a week after I saw them. Oh God. Sunday, April 3rd, 2011. Outside on the front step in Park Ridge. It's gorgeous outside. It's in the 60s. Steve called at 2, and he said he was on his way to visit Dad. Later, he reported that Dad was weak. He said that Dad didn't want to eat lunch because of a bowel movement problem. 8:30 p.m. I think I'm finally finished for the day. It was heaven spending more than 2 hours out in the garden. I cleared the west side and uncovered allium, dianthus, sundrops, coreopsis, and prairie smoke, all returning. Oh, and my little bitty delicate favorite, my blue-eyed grass, was coming back. I hacked all 3 butterfly bushes. The back of the yard, my prairie, is quite a mess. Old coneflowers, milkweed stalks, verbena, black-eyed Susans, and lilies all need to be raked and removed. But I've already made a lot of progress for this time of year. Yesterday, I pushed the spade into the front yard garden and created a nice clean border. The salvia and nettle are coming up, and so are the mini daffodils that I added to the garden last year. I placed some screening over the coreopsis today since I saw the bunny browsing. I also observed a pair of robins fighting with each other across the street. I wonder if our additions planted last spring will pop into life this season. So far, it looks as though the star magnolia tree is doing well, as it's full of fuzzy oval buds. The cherry plum isn't showing new growth, but I'm confident it will develop as the days pass. The prairie fire crabapple is another story. Some of its limbs are decorated with fresh buds, but the tree may not survive. Thank God for my backyard refuge. I called Mom a few hours ago, and she sounded tired and drained. She spoke through her fatigue and told me she was busy working on the jigsaw puzzle I had picked up at the Target a block from the hospital the day of the surgery. She said she stayed up until 1:30 a.m. doing the puzzle. No, Mom, no, don't do that. Steve told me earlier today that Mom had told Kath that Dad has given up. One sign is that he isn't interested in wearing his dentures, which is totally unusual for him. And then there is the lack of eating because of the bowel movement problem. I can't imagine how lonely and devastating it would be for one spouse to believe that the other has just given up. After Steve visited Dad today, however, he told Mom, in his opinion, that was not the case. Steve relayed that he and Dad talked about several future events and that Dad was very interested in being around for them. Thank goodness our family shares information and isn't any bigger, because I can see how communication could get really frustrating and misconstrued. Steve also said Kath was on her way to the hospital after he left. I texted her, and she responded that Pop graciously allowed her to stay, and she read for 2 hours beside him. She said that he drank a chocolate protein shake for dinner. So that's the good news of the day. But I just don't know what to think. Of course, consuming nutrition is critical, but I am wondering again where Pop is on this journey. What is going on with the bowel? Being constipated is causing him not to eat. And I just don't know if he is still refusing medication because of this as well. To me, it seems as though the next 2 days will be critical, life or death kind of days. It's possible he will do well in therapy tomorrow. And it's also the day he is to be moved from ICU to a regular room. But what if none of this goes well? Another day of losing more of himself, and through no fault of his own. I think he is trying the approaches he believes will produce the desired result. Pop's moves are all calculated to work in his favor. That's just how he is. He's not a doctor, and he could be wrong, but it's his body, his bowel movement problem. Perhaps he is the best judge of how to alleviate this issue. But what if this is just what it appears to be, a big problem? Maybe this is a big problem because the body is breaking down in its own way just because. Just because one thing has led to another, and this is his body's reality. At church this morning, 3 readers and the priest read the long passage from John about the healing of the man born blind. During the homily, the priest said that the blind man was sitting in the temple to be as close to God as possible. He asked us, do we put ourselves in God's presence? He mentioned how important it is for us to take time to reflect on our lives and what is happening around us, and that we can become more aware of God's presence in our daily lives. Through reflection and awareness, he said, God's presence can become a conviction in our lives. If we don't reflect, he said, we won't develop conviction, and something else will become our priority. After answering questions about he is now able to see, the man born blind becomes convicted. The blind man stated, "It was the Lord that visited me during this time of healing." The priest ended with another question. Have we reflected on what God has done for us? This is a great Lenten question. Wow, this young, newly ordained priest had no idea I was out there appreciating his every word and writing them down on old receipts I had found in my purse. At the end of Mass, a friend hurried toward me to ask about my dad. I updated her a bit, but not too much, and we parted. As I headed to the door, I saw my friend Helena and her family, so my family and I stopped and chatted with them. A few minutes later, I found myself standing next to the young priest, who no longer had a big line of people keeping him occupied. Now he was standing alone. I pivoted toward him and said, "Hi, I love you." Then I gasped and grimaced and said, "Oh, so sorry." He kindly laughed and nodded. I added, "I love your comments about conviction." He said he just hoped some people would take a little time out of their day to reflect. Remaining side by side, I revealed that my Lenten practice this year was to journal every day about the question, what is the meaning of life? I told him I started writing in a spiral notebook on Ash Wednesday morning. "And what have you found so far?" he asked. I was taken aback by his question, but grateful that he was interested. I stood there and said, "Well, the afternoon of Ash Wednesday, my dad was admitted to the ER, and it's been an ongoing situation ever since." He said something about maybe God has been preparing me for this. And he added, "You had to be open to this." What a blessing he was to me, and it didn't end there. He asked me to let him know how this Lenten practice of mine turns out. I'd like to know too. What is to become of Pop tomorrow, the next day, and the next day? What am I to do? Am I doing the right thing? One matter I want to note before I fall asleep. About 4 feet away from me, near the foot of my bed, I've created an altar that includes gifts from close friends who are walking with me through this time of pain and uncertainty. I received a canvas wall hanging with a message about family that my neighbor gave to me a few days ago. A palm-sized, heart-shaped polished stone from Peg and Helena. And a lovely cloth bag filled with spiritual books from my friend Janet. Janet also told me the Carmelite nuns are praying for my dad. Helena informed me that the Resurrection nuns are praying for him too. And another neighbor brought me a big bag of Cheetos after I updated her on the situation yesterday. Good night to all. We'll see what Monday brings. Thanks. See you next time.